Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of Randomly Leveled, and today we have Tiddlyfisher. Say hello.
Hello.
Hi. And today we are going to be talking about exploration in games. And this was the topic that was originally planned for episode 2, but it got lost. It was the lost episode 2. And so the topic is exploration in games. I'm just going to start off by asking you, when I say exploration in games, what do you think of?
Huh. That's a bit of a deep question.
It is.
Well, I think a lot of Monster Hunter because when you first play it, you come in with a little like a shield and a sword, and then like you learn immediately about there's all kinds of different weapon types, and there's this armor and that armor, and then you can do this, and you can learn skills by using like jewels in these slots. And so it was a lot to take in. And then you're like, wow, information overload. But then you will try this weapon type or that weapon type. And it's like you're exploring all of the mechanics. And I think that that's a good example of exploration in games.
Right. Now, I've not played Monster Hunter games. I can't comment on that, but I would say you pretty much hit the nail on the head if I can get my phrases right. Um, yeah, so you've hit the nail on the head there because I think a lot of the time when we look at, and I'm not, and people are going to think I'm bashing on open world games here. I'm not. But when you look at a lot of what is deemed as exploration, it usually is about how many different places there are that you can go and which ways do you go. Now, when I was originally making this episode, back whenever that was, when we were making episode 2, I was playing Borderlands 2 at the time, and that was what really prompted the subject because I was thinking, the thing is with Borderlands 2 is that it's a pretty open game in terms of its geographical exploration. There's different places you go off, everywhere's connected, all these paths linked to each other and everything. But when you look at the actual, like, the way that the game's set up, it doesn't feel prevalent because yes, you can go to these different places, but when I think about Borderlands 2 and I think about where places are in relation to each other, I haven't got a clue. And usually with exploration, the idea is that you explore to learn things. But I wasn't given any more information because it didn't matter to me. And the reason it didn't matter to me is because when you actually accept a quest, it comes up with an icon on the map as to where you have to go, so you don't have to think about where places are, you just have to go where the icon is, and you can teleport to any other place, like with the fast travel system. And there's really not much motivation to learn where things are. It doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I remember when I was playing, and I was very excited to get the vehicle because I thought, when I get this vehicle, I'm going to go all around the map and I'm going to find all the secrets.
Mm-hmm.
But while working up to that, it was go from here to here, go from here to here, point A to point B, point A to point B, get at Sanctuary. And so it became apparent very quickly that there isn't any real exploration here. It's just a large map.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get that, and I think the issue I have is that I think it does us bad to assume, like for the industry to assume that having a big map is the be all and end all of exploration. And I really get the feeling because when you look at a lot of games these days, and you look at how they're advertised, one of the things that they'll often say is in a big open world, and that is fine because a big open world is certainly one way to derive openness, to have a system which is open, but it's not the be all and end all, and it doesn't create strategy inherently. It certainly can, but it doesn't create strategy. And in terms of like cheese and stuff, it really depends on what's like on what's around you. I mean, when I think of, say, for example, Far Cry 3, and this is another game that I did enjoy playing, and I watched an interview of someone talking to, I think it was one of the developers, and they were saying like, you can go anywhere you want, you have the freedom to do what you want, and I'm thinking, no, you don't. You go to the towers to unlock parts of the map, and you liberate the camps, and you hunt animals to upgrade your equipment, and that's a good thing. I mean, they're nice things, and I certainly had a good time doing those things. But I think it's wrong to pretend that it means that you've got this grand like strategy game, or you've got this grand idea of exploring and finding all these new and exciting things. Because really, it's the same thing plastered all over. And you get this. I mean, another game I really enjoyed, Burnout Paradise. Again, open world type game. It is just the same type of event plastered all over, and you go up to the event and you activate them, and then you do a challenge. Now, I think when I think of an open world as to how it would it would work, like how you would make it so that it is actually open, is to make it so that you have to think about the places and in some sort of way. And Far Cry 3 does do that to an extent. And in fact, all open world games do it at least a little bit. But the thing is with Far Cry 3 is that, say with the enemy bases, once you take over them, they become fast travel points. So there is this element of like trying to like plan your way around as to like how you would go about taking them over, like which route do you take and stuff. And like, should you walk too far into the distance? Because yes, you might find something there. You might find like treasure or something that will give you more experience or something, or certain types of animals that will give you different types, that will upgrade different types of equipment. But you have to worry about like obviously dying and then going sent back as far back as it would take you. So there is an element of strategy there, and the world is integrated into the system. And I certainly think that an open world is certainly a way of creating this exploration element of a game. But it's to say that we have an open world and then just say therefore it's got exploration, I think is totally missing the point. Because like you say with Monster Hunter, it's about learning the mechanics and how learning how things work, and the more that you know, the better you'll do. And I think that's what exploration would be. What do you think?
Yes, I would definitely say that, well, for one, when I think of an open world game, obviously most people might think of like Minecraft because true, that's just like the epitome of open world in open world games because, I mean, it really is open. There's not really anywhere that you're going to walk into and you can't continue. And there's always a sense of, I need this item. I need to go out and get this item. Like you never really reach a point where you're self-sufficient or you don't ever think, I don't need to go out and do this or get this. I don't need this material because it could all be of use. It's always like the world is the game. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's very almost strange because there's not a lot of games where it's like you are always like this like using the world to get place to place, but you never actually take from the world. And so if you start in one biome, as they're called, like a forest or something, but you're trying to get all the achievements in this game, and you would have to travel potentially a very far distance to get to this other biome and find this material or this creature to get this achievement, and there's always like a reason to go somewhere. Oh, there goes my bird. Um,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
there's also like how we've talked before about how there's the buzzword open world, how that immediately adds something to the game, but it doesn't, because if I took a glass of water here and I poured it into a bucket, that doesn't improve the water in any way. It's just that it's a bigger area and the water has now sunk lower. And that's a lot like how it is. It's like if you take a game and then you put it into an open world that it doesn't need to be in, it almost brings down the quality because you're just walking longer distances or you're just traveling longer distances. And then they have fast travel, which just takes all of it away. What's the point of the open world if you're just going to have a loading screen to get from here to here? And then just it's almost as if it was an afterthought. The open world doesn't matter.
I've got to say, I really like the water in a bucket analogy. Although, you see, I understand the idea of well, the idea of fast travel. What I understand about it is that um, since ex- the I think the idea behind it is that since exploring is about going out to find new places, it wouldn't be exploration if you're going back, traveling back to the same places, and because and I also think it kind of adds an exploration value in a way because what it means is that by exploring new places and unlocking new fast travel points, you are actually expanding the map as like how far you can go and where you can go, and it's like by going out there to explore, you are improving yourself by creating these fast travel points. If you know what I mean.
Right?
So I don't think fast travel like diminishes exploration. I think it would. I think there are some cases whereby it might be too easy to fast travel, just like going to a place. But again, it does depend on the scale and the size of the world as well. You wouldn't want like a huge, massive world where you have to like go back and forth through it every single time.
Right. Well, it wasn't to say that fast travel diminishes exploration, but it diminishes the open world, I find. Because it's like with Borderlands, that's not really an open world, but it's an example of a big world. And if you make this big world, but then it doesn't matter, what's the point of making it like a big open world if it would be just fine in a contained world? That's what I was trying to get at.
I would say that an open world can. I mean, the general consensus is that an open world is there for the sake of exploration, but I would say that in some senses it's there for the sake of randomness, because um, say like if you start a game in an open world and you're in the middle of this open world and you can go any direction you want and you don't know where anything is yet because you haven't done any exploring. Really, there's no motivation to go in direction A than direction B. Like you can't really say to myself, you can't really think ahead and go, right, well, I'm gonna go north because that's the best way. You just head off in whichever way you want to. And that and what that results in is people finding things in a different order, and finding things in a different order changes up the game because it means that things will happen differently. I mean, even if it's just a slight thing like you find one place before another place, and that place has a vendor that sells something slightly more expensive, it's still a difference, and you're still rewarded for um, discovering more and more places.
Right. Because it's like again, going back to like Minecraft, you never it's always like the same goal when you first start is to find a tree, get some wood, and then you can get tools and you can dig down. And
Yeah,
so it's almost like, how would I put this? Well, I guess it just like aligns with what you were saying because your goal is to get like wood, it doesn't matter which direction you go in, it's just whichever one you feel like you should go. And then there's a chance that you will find trees and there's a chance that you won't. Although usually you will, but you could be unlucky and spawn in a desert.
yeah. And you'll kind of like have it set out like in your mind, like, okay, there's a desert there. So you will come to like learn things. So it's not, I mean, it's not that open worlds don't create openness. It's just uh, to me openness, right? If you talk about like people say open world, but I wouldn't use that statement as much. I would use it to describe a particular type of map design, but I would say a game is an open game if it's got like lots of variables that affect each other in the long run. I would consider that more of an open game, but it all depends. Like the Sky games, for example, I think are amongst the most open games I've ever played. And then when I look at Far Cry 3, for example, yes, it's a game I like. It's a game I certainly enjoyed, and it's got an open world. But would I consider it one of the most open games I've played? Definitely not, because the open world doesn't cut it. That isn't what makes openness. It's not the be all and end all of what openness is. But you know, you've got people who like look at Final Fantasy 13 and say, "Oh well, this is linear because of the map design," which, well, okay, that's part of it, but you know, you need to look at the bigger picture.
I just it's almost like a very amusing when they say Final Fantasy 13 is very linear, but they always point out the map and it just shows that how little they understand. It's that they don't understand that the point isn't to be exploring this huge map or to be looking for these things or like this thing. It's just essentially as like a gauntlet to fight enemies and to strengthen your characters. And that's really the point of all RPGs is just to strengthen the characters. And so um oh, and also how there are the different roles and you can develop any well not any of them at any time, but when they start out with the three, you can develop any of those three roles in any order, and then you can get unlock the other three, the secondary roles, and develop those in any order. And it is very open because you could develop Vanille, for instance, to be very offensive instead and like not develop her in the medic role at all. And on the other hand, you could pour all of the CP into her medic role and make her a very, very defensive character. And I think that is very open, which most people wouldn't agree with.
Yeah, I would say I would say that definitely contributes to its openness. Um, but I generally like just when people say like a game is linear, I kind of have to like think into my mind that well, what they're really saying is that it's got like a linear map. Have you seen that image that's been going around? This actually exemplifies the point I've been trying to make. Um, have you seen the image that's been going around where it's like FPS design then, FPS design now? And the FPS design then is like this map of all like these different like secret rooms and like different areas with different things laid around, and the FPS now map is like a line that bends a bit. Have you seen that?
I think I might have. It seems familiar, but I can't remember it in my head.
I think the thing is though is that I also think uh, that exploration and an open design also depends on what type of game it is, because certain types of games are more location based. So like if you wanted to, like say you got like a first person shooter, like today, like say like today's like Call of Duty or Medal of Honor, and you look at the campaign mods, and it is like walking forwards, and then like like your comrades like shouting like, "Oh, they're over there," and then you point and you shoot at them, and then when they die, you're like, "Oh, come on, we've got to get to the next place," and then you walk forward, and then another fight, like, "Oh, more enemies," um, and it's like that continuously. It's a different type of game. It's not um exploration based because if you look at something like Shadow Warrior, which is from the early 90s, I think I've played it briefly. Something like Shadow Warrior, the levels are like a maze with different like secret areas with like ammo and health and stuff, and like you've got like regenerating health now, which is a big contributor towards linearity, regenerating health. Um, but you can go around like all these different places, like all these rooms, and you can find things and you can explore and discover things that you couldn't find before, and like go through all these secret areas and like, well, this one room has a rocket launcher, which if you find that room, you're at an advantage because you have something that other players wouldn't. So yes, there's that level of exploration, but you have to remember that first of all, an increased amount of exploration doesn't make a game better. It just makes it different, and it depends on what type of games you like. I mean, I love games with lots of exploration. I love being able to like work out how things work out and being able to discover things. But at the same time, you have to think about the first person shooter genre. Or I know you say it's not a genre; it's a mechanic, but you know what I mean. It's just if you think about first person shooters, if you think about first person shooters, um, and you look at what they offer in terms of exploration, if they're not RPGs, because what makes a game an RPG is all about the leveling and the customizing and all that sort of stuff. If you look at RPGs, there is an inherent sense of exploration in the mechanics of what you have and what you do. But with something like a first person shooter, you're not going to be like adding different buffs to your weapons, and you're not going to be adding all these different effects and going through skill trees of weapons and stuff. If it's just like a normal person shooter, you'll be going places, finding weapons, shooting them, using up your ammo, and finding health or gaining health. So the map design, the large map design, is a way for those games to add exploration, but there's become an underlying assumption that that is how you add exploration to all games. But some games, even if you just look at, even the early RPGs, like if you look at the first Dragon Quest, and if you look at like the first few Final Fantasy games, especially one and two, there's a lot more geographic exploration there because there isn't that much like deep customization with the characters. So they've kind of created more openness through the map. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Um, I've played Final Fantasy 2 for a bit, and going from Final Fantasy 5, because I played that one before, to Final Fantasy 2 was very. I guess it was just like such a shock, like how different all of them really are, because although while Final Fantasy V is still open geographically in a way, not very much, but in a way, it had all those jobs that you could develop for any of the characters however you liked. While Final Fantasy II, um, you could still like develop all the characters however you liked, but there was more exploration through just the world geographically. and less in the characters because it felt like there were less variables because it was really just you can pick this weapon for this character and you can teach them this magic, and that was basically it. Wasn't bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was just simple, but I liked it a lot. It was probably one of the best I've played because I mean, obviously, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it almost as much as Final Fantasy 13, which I can't wait to finish or get all the achievements for. That'll be incredible.
It's so refreshing talking to someone who really likes 13. It really is.
Ugh, I can't believe anybody wouldn't like it. It's so good.
Wow.
Um,
Once you've finished that, and once you've once you've done 13 too, uh, I will say I will be like, you must play Lightning Returns.
Honestly,
Lightning Re-
I
hmm?
can't wait to get to Lightning Returns. I mean, we're kind of, I guess, fangirling and fanboying here, but I'm very, very excited for Lightning Returns, especially her bad bitch glasses that she wears. Even though she wears them for just a brief period of time, they are the most iconic clothing item I think I've ever seen in a video game. Although Lara Croft's red circle lens glasses are a close second.
Now, here's the thing. Sometimes when it comes to these podcasts, I kind of worry that I talk about that I'm going to likely jump on like one or two games and talk about them too much because you don't want to hear me talk about just my favorite games all the time. I'm not gonna like. I mean, in the first episode, I talked about I mentioned Azure Dreams because Big C had just started playing Azure Dreams, and Azure Dreams is my favorite game of all time. So yeah, and we didn't have a subject for that. So yeah, we were going to talk about Azure Dreams, and I didn't. I did not want to push this episode on to saying like, oh, this game doesn't have exploration, this game does. I did really want to make sure that I covered I covered all the like just the topics so that people could look at what I'm saying because people know I love Lightning Returns and I didn't want to just go say Lightning Returns is the best. I didn't want to just do that. But now that you've brought it up, I can. I
uh, yes.
and like Lightning Returns and this actually just goes back because you were talking about fast travel before. Lightning Returns does have fast travel, but you have to pay 3 EP to do it. And it's just and 3 because the way that the game works is that you don't get experience from killing enemies. You get things that they drop, and you also recover EP. So if you think of EP as like MP, although not it's not you don't there aren't as many abilities that use it. It's much more scarce. It's kind of like you fight battles to recover EP, and EP is like your resource for using skills like freezing time and teleporting, and even fully healing costs EP to use. Um, but what I love about it so much is that you've got it. It's not so open geographically, and it is. Some people say it's the most open fantasy game geographically. I'm not sure about that, and people said it's the biggest geographically, and again, I really wouldn't think it is. I mean, I don't know how you would judge that, but there there really is such a core value. I mean, traveling. The game just it makes some things that would you would think are so simple and puts like this entire system behind it. Like just traveling from one place in the world to another is going to cost something, and you have to decide what it's going to cost. And I think that's a really good way of having that sort of geographical exploration because the distances between places really matters. So, for example, if it's past day 9, you can run along the paths in between. But of course, you're going to fight hard enemies there, and you're going to have real time is going to tick away, and you're going to have all these other things. Or you can teleport there, which costs 3 EP. Or you can get the train, but depending on where you want to go and where from and where to, it might take 2 trains to get there. So you've got all this stuff. Like, it's not just like, I want to go there, let's head there. You've really got to think about like where you want to go and how you're going to get there. And sometimes you just have to pause and think, do I really want to go there? And you have to think through, like, can I justify to myself going to that place? Because you have to think about all the thing, what it's going to cost you to do it. And I love it.
I can't wait to love it because I know I'm going to. It's it's very interesting because that is both geographical exploration and mechanical exploration because like when
Absolutely.
as you're playing, you are going to find out, hey, this costs 3 EP for me to travel instantly, but it costs me game time to take the train, or it costs me real time to travel through the gates. And it's all about, as it seems to me that Lightning Returns is just exploration at the highest degree, which is very nice.
Hmm.
You know,
Possibly.
hmm?
Hmm. It is. I mean, it is amazing. um, but you have to. I mean, but it's a type of thing where you get into situations whereby I think after I've mentioned this, we can move on to the questions. Lightning Returns is one of those games where you get to a point where you just have to stop and think about what you're going to do for like the next amount of time, because it sometimes it can really matter. And things like, say there's like a boss at the end of a dungeon, right? There's one boss, for example, who is really hard, and obviously because of the way that it's laid out, and you can do all the main quests in pretty much any order you want. It's kind of like it's there for you to discover that it's hard and that you shouldn't do it straight away, but you should later do it. And obviously, have starting a battle with more EP puts you at a huge advantage because it costs EP to use Curaga, it costs EP to do these big powerful attacks and stuff, and it costs EP to do all these things. There aren't that many EP abilities, but the ones that it does have, there's quite a good variety there. And so you have to think to yourself, like, you want to get to this boss with as much EP as possible, but that's a challenge. Like, because because you'll want to freeze time, which costs 1 EP to use. You'll want to freeze time to get through, and you'll fight enemies along the way to recover your EP, but obviously fighting enemies takes down your health, and items are very limited, so do you want to use the items? You can only carry so much at a time. And but also you want to make sure that you have the items ready for when you're at the boss. So you've really got to balance this out. And when you get to the boss, you've got to. It's like it might be like I am stronger now in the game than I was before, and as a result of that, it doesn't necessarily mean that my stats are higher, like better to be able to fight this boss. But I have more EP when I do, even though your stats will most likely be higher. But there's a lot of that, like I have this EP. And there was one time I was like at the end of this dungeon, and I finally got something that would allow me to turn in a quest, and I had to stop and think to myself, like, to go ahead and fight this boss, or I can run for my life in the opposite direction to get to this town to hand this quest in before the day's over. And I decided to run as fast as I can in the other direction, and I had to think to myself, like, when does the train arrive? How long does it take? What what time would I have to arrive at that place by? Can the enemies that I fight, would if I fight them, would I get enough EP to allow me to teleport? And if I don't choose to teleport, can I freeze time for long enough? And even still, are they going to damage me more so that I have to spend more EP curing? And there's just, and I did actually make it. I can't remember if I did teleport or not, but I did actually make it. Of course, if you want to teleport, you have to hold off spending EP to freeze time, so you're going to put yourself at a risk there, so you have to dedicate yourself. And I just managed to do it, and I was so relieved. And I love that because you're discovering how everything works. You're thinking about things, and the more information that you have, the more that you know, the better you'll do.
I'm just, my mind is reeling as I'm trying to imagine being in a similar situation. That would be wonderful. That actually makes me think of Resident Evil, because there are a lot of situations where you have to think, should I use this green herb by itself now, or wait until I find a red herb so that I can heal more if I'm damaged more? Because a red herb doesn't do anything by itself, which means
Hmm.
if you are to use the red herb, I mean the green herb, then you essentially lost two other herbs worth of healing, because the way it worked back then, Resident Evil, is that three green herbs will heal you fully, and so will a green herb and a red herb. So it's always being aware of the items you have and what they do and what you can do. I'm surprised we haven't talked about Tomb Raider, considering this is the subject is exploration.
Well, we can do that. We can talk about Tomb Raider, and the episode might just go on a bit longer.
Ah, right. Well,
Is that all right with you?
yeah, I definitely have the time.
Right. Um, that's fine. Uh, so yeah, I mean, my experience with Tomb Raider is mostly Tomb Raider 2 because that was the one that I started with, and it was the one I got the most into. I have played 1, 3, and 4, and with the first one, I managed to get, I think, into the second half. With the third one, I could not pass the third level, and with the fourth one, I can't remember. I remember playing it for a good while, but I don't haven't got a clue how far I got.
Huh. Well,
So what would you say? What would you say about exploration and Tomb Raider then?
well, firstly, I have played all of them, um, except for that one where I don't know, where she has this guy who has a spear and they work together. It was really weird. I didn't play that one, but
Lara Croft and the Guardian of Light, is it?
yes, I couldn't recall. Never played that one. Can't talk
Yeah,
about it really. I don't have the experience, but they were very consistent, I found. Like Tomb Raider to Tomb Raider 6, they all had the same feeling, which I thought was very good because I like consistency. And
yeah,
although Tomb Raider 6 was the odd one out, but that's a different. I'll get to that later.
yeah. Yeah, I forgot to mention that I have played Legend.
Oh yes, that's the seventh one. But the thing with Tomb Raider is that obviously there are secrets, and if you collect all the secrets, there is a bonus. Um, I have never really gotten all the secrets because I just never really cared. It didn't interest me because I didn't think the reward was worth it. However, I would get some of the secrets because I did know where they were. And Tomb Raider just is exploration. Like that is geographical exploration. That's the epitome of geographical exploration. You have a goal that you want to get this artifact or these artifacts, and so you just go through wherever you're starting in to go and get them. I remember
Hmm.
I was about 4 or 5 when I first played the original Tomb Raider, and walking into that cave, I had no idea what to expect really. I remember walking to the end of the cave and seeing that there was, the big hole. You climb up and you can continue on to the level. But if you kept going forward it the cave kept going in a different direction. So I went that way because I had already been going that direction. And there was a ramp that you can use a dexterity challenge or whatever to jump and then time it right and then jump into the secret hole and then you get health items. And so I felt, being a kid, I thought I did the greatest thing ever because I was thinking nobody's ever found this but me, of course. But it was
Yeah.
very, very, very exciting. And then I went to the menu and I saw that I had this many health packs and this many large health packs. And I was like, hey, I only have one of these large health packs. I wonder how that's going to be. And then you keep going and then you fight the bats or whatever and then you discover the guns, which as a kid, I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And then
Mm-hmm.
the open door with the lever or whatever. And it's like through that level, you learned a lot about the basic mechanics because all the Tomb Raiders have levers. And some people criticize this because it's always like, pull this lever, open the door somewhere, go find it. But I think they're usually always pretty well laid out because in that first level, there's a time challenge where you have to pull the lever, and then you have to make it back to the other side in time. And if you go the same way that you initially did to get there, you definitely aren't going to make it in time, and you have to quickly jump across these little blocks. And then you learn that, well, you explored it a different way, and then you learn, hey, sometimes throughout the time challenges, things are timed, because it never really tells you when something is timed, which is always, I guess, exciting because you're always on edge. You never know. You always are just racing around. And they were always adding new things in each installment, which is always exciting because always there's something new. I remember in Tomb Raider 2, they added like five or so weapons, new weapons. So there was that thing, of course, exploration weapons that did different things. But the big one was in Tomb Raider 3 when they first introduced um, sprinting. Because sprinting was a big deal. Because while they did have crawling in the second one, that wasn't that big of a deal. It was just like,
They didn't have crawling in
are you
two.
sure?
Yeah.
Hmm, strange. Well, then in Tomb Raider 3, they added crawling and sprinting, which was why it was a big deal. Because there's just one level I will never forget. It was in Nevada, and you're in Area 51. You've been captured by the MP guys, and you have to um, activate this rocket to make the exhaust vent or something open so you can run out and escape. And when you activate the rocket, the flames will come down and they start going towards the exhaust vent. And you have to quickly sprint through there um, to escape. But you wouldn't ever know that. And I remember dying at that part a lot because it was difficult. But that is just very exciting. It's very interesting to always explore these levels and explore what happens because you could always reload. Of course, like, that wasn't that big of a deal, at least on the um, computer version, because you could save anywhere. So sometimes,
Was that which one was that? Three.
um, yes, that was in 3 where you had the
Right.
rocket. You could save anywhere in any of the
Right.
PlayStation
Well,
computer games.
well, well. In the version of three that I watched, the PS1 version, you had to have save
Right.
crystals.
That's some people really. That's a lot of the reason why people hate Tomb Raider 3 because they played it on the PlayStation, which is upsetting because it is my favorite Tomb Raider game. And despite it having the save crystals, I think I would still enjoy third on PlayStation. But that is actually interesting because I think that takes away some of the exploration in 3 in a way because a lot of times that you would save and then you would try this certain way of going through this puzzle or this gauntlet, and then you would die usually the first time. And you think, okay, now I know I need to jump here instead of here, or I need to sprint for this much, and then I can jump and do this and this and this. And it was always like exploring constantly, not just geographically, but exploring the way that the puzzles or gauntlets work. So it is upsetting that they ruined that in a way with the save crystals because there were quite a lot of tough gauntlets in Tomb Raider 3 where you could die easily. Especially in you wouldn't know this. Actually no you would because in the first no, it was actually in the second level of Tomb Raider 3, there were poison darts in some areas, which would of course drain down your health if you didn't heal. And that made things very tough because if you didn't have anything to heal with, then you would just die, even though you took a little bit of damage.
Hmm.
And with save crystals, you would always have to go either very far back or you run out of crystals because you would just always save. And that's just too bad.
And I, I think this is one of those things where you have to also think like it's very easy to say a game has a thing or a game doesn't have a thing, but I think you've also got to measure things by how things affect different people depending on different things. Like on one hand, you could say, well, the saved crystals reduce exploration because you're less motivated to go to different places and stuff. You want to just do what's best or whatever, or you don't, or like you're discouraged because you know that if you fail, you'll get sent back further. At the same time, you could say for people who are better at the game, who are higher skilled, that it increases exploration because it becomes a challenge to explore the different optimal places to use the save crystals. So I think it's more complicated than just this game has exploration, this game doesn't, because when you've got different people with different abilities to do different things, it the way that you approach the mechanics changes.
That's very true. I didn't think of that because there are indeed optimal places for the crystals, which you would have to discover through exploring, which is just a new facet that I haven't even looked at. Because I mean, I haven't ever played this PlayStation version. Well, actually, I have, but only briefly. So I'm not familiar with that territory at all.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Another game. We'll get to the. I think we should. Actually, no, no, no. Um, I remember something I was going to say about Tomb Raider that I think really enhances the level of exploration, and I am talking like geographic in the geographical sense. Um, the puzzles in Tomb Raider games have quite a large scope, in that it's not just you enter a room, this room has a puzzle, solve it, because the puzzles extend throughout the entire level. Like sometimes you'll find something and it will contribute towards something that happens somewhere else in the level. Um, and it's just a case of like going around and finding things. I have very specific memories of playing Tomb Raider 2 in Barkhang Monastery when I remember specifically it was during Easter as well, and I was having Easter eggs at the time. I remember playing on Barkhang Monastery and just loving how things were all over the place, and I had to like go to different places and learn where things were and stuff. It was loads of fun. It was um it was more than any room do puzzle, because it was like just, and it just felt like, and I know I'm going to like one of those marketing people. It felt like this huge immersive world, if you get what I mean.
Yes.
Be, because it was because of like how you had to go to these places that were all over the place, and if you didn't pay attention to where you had gone, you would end up going to the same place twice. And it's like I can when I think of level design, Tomb Raider games, especially, I mean, and I say especially Tomb Raider 2 because that's the one that I'm most familiar with. It's the only one I've completed. When I think of level design, I always think of like Tomb Raider 2 as like the pinnacle because, and again, this goes back to what I was saying before about like how FPSs, because there isn't as much depth in your character's being and stuff with like stats and everything like RPGs do. They add the depth with the geographical exploration and going around from place to place. And I think Tomb Raider 2 did this really well because you had to sometimes there were some times, and I love this. Sometimes you would do things, you would get things, and the first thing that would come into your mind is, how does that help me? And a couple of examples I can think of. A couple of examples I can think of is that in Venice, you hit the switches to unlock the gates, but the gates don't unlock any new places. They're just different paths to what, like, when you're on the boat. They're just different paths that lead to places that you can get from anywhere. So you think to yourself, how does that help me? And so, because you're having to think about how it benefits you, it's like you later realize, like, oh, okay, I see. It's creating a shortcut so that when I do hit that switch and I've got the time limit, I can make it. Whereas before, I couldn't because I had to go like wind around all these different places. So that's how it helps me. And there's another place. There's another one in the. I believe it's in the offshore rig. There's a bit at the end where you get the green card key, and it unlocks a door, but the door is between two places that you can get between anywhere. But you have so you think to yourself like, how does that help me? Like, what am I gaining from that door opening? But then you realise that, well, hold on a second. Only one of these two pools can be full of water at a time, and in order for me to get to where that door is, usually I'd need the first pool full. But now that the door's open, I can drain the first pool so that I can then get to that place with the first pool drained, and therefore the second pool will be full so I can make it across. And I love that.
Absolutely. And when you were saying how sometimes the puzzles aren't exactly you just are in this room trying to solve it, it's that the whole level is a puzzle. Because I think in Tomb Raider 3, it was when you are in the southern islands, the coastal islands or something, and it's one of the infamous like dinosaur levels. Okay, because we all know that Tomb Raider had the dinosaurs and they were always iconic. But in this one,
Yeah.
there's this military plane that had crashed, and then the military men or whatever, it might have been mercenaries or something, were out and about fighting the velociraptors, and you could choose to kill the mercenaries for their ammo for your guns, or allow them to kill the velociraptors for you, which is an interesting bit of exploration. That's not what I was getting at, because you had to go around and collect keys for this plane, because inside the plane there was a mounted grenade launcher which you use to blow down a stone wall to climb up and exit the level. And I thought that was very interesting, because on the previous level, it was all about, it was also a lot about, from like, get this key here, unlock this, do this puzzle, and quickly jump through this gauntlet. And this level was, there weren't any gauntlets really, although there was a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is very scary. Despite it being like just a blocky mess, it's still scary because it can instantly kill you.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was a lot of Tomb Raider ramble.
So there's one more game that I want to talk about before we get to the questions, and this is a game. It's called Tearaway Thomas. It was the first game I ever played, and it was on the Amiga. And I've noticed this. I've seen footage of a few Amiga games, and this is kind of on the level of exploration as well. And it kind of, and I know some people would dismiss it as being trial and error. Uh, not specifically. I think it, well, in some games it say it would, but with Tearaway Thomas, for example, Tearaway Thomas. is a very fast game in that you move fast. You have a timer that you've got to reach the end in. You've got to like collect so many gems before you can complete the level. But there's also a lot of exploration in the level design, not so much in the levels themselves, even although that is important, but just in the way that the levels are set up. Because the way that the game works is that yeah, you've got like 50 or so levels, and you've got an amount of lives, and if you run out of lives, it's game over. The way you run out of lives is that if the timer ticks down the whole way in a level, you lose a life and the timer starts again. So you have to try to get through all these different levels with as many lives as possible. Now you can get more lives by, well, you can find them, but they're very rare. But you can also get more lives by getting so many points, and you get points for doing things like collecting so many gems and completing the level with all the gems without losing a life. And so you can use levels to build up lives. And one of the elements of the game is skipping levels, because there are stars that you can collect throughout the game which would allow you to skip ahead in levels. So there's one in the first level where if you collect the star in the first level, if you find it and you exit, you'll appear in level 5. So at least I think it's level 5. I've not actually done that for ages, but it comes to this point where you have to learn the levels enough where you have to judge how much does this level benefit me. You have to judge how how many points you'll be able to get in that level as to how much it'll help you against how much lives you're likely to lose in that level. So now, these days, although maybe not right now, but when I've been playing it more recently, I found that I don't skip any of the levels in the first 2 worlds, each world being 10 levels. I don't skip any of them. I go through and I can collect all the gems on every level in the first 2 worlds, of the first 20 levels, and I can get to the end fine, and I can rack up lives. However, third world, I can do fine in. Fourth world, oh dear, all my lives are going. Because you have to like learn the levels to judge, like, is it worth me getting gems? Is it worth me not getting gems and stuff? Is it worth me like avoiding the potential of losing lives? And obviously there's the exploration in that you have to find the stars. There's the exploration in that you have to learn the levels so that you can get better at them and do them faster. But there's different like ranges of challenges. So you can, for example, um, you can set out to you can set if you are amazing at this game, you can set out to collect every gem, because when you complete it, I've seen the ending, I've not actually completed it. When you get to the end, it keeps a record of how many gems you've collected. You can set out to get every gem. That's going to be really hard, obviously, but along the way, you have to think to yourself, like, because you're judging about which levels to skip. If you do skip levels, you can't collect every gem. So you really, it's like different challenges for different levels of people, for different skill levels. And there's some levels, and I've said this before, and I think this is kind of mind blowing when you think about it, right? There's some levels in the fourth world that are so hard that I skip them without a moment's notice. There's two levels that you can skip. One of them is this a level where you've got like 15 seconds to collect all the gems on this giant spinning wheel, which you'll just lose loads of them. And there's another level whereby if you fall off, if you slip down the slope before you have enough gems, it's game over. You can't get back. Instant game over. Um, and so to me, I'm just like skipping. There's no question about it. I'm skipping those levels. Now, what's interesting though is that it feels like those levels are secret levels, but they're not. I am just so used to skipping them that they feel hidden. And I think that's very interesting and quite amazing that they've set up a game in such a way whereby your constant willingness to avoid something makes it feel secret. I think it's very strange, and I don't just when I say it's a brilliant game, I don't. Well, I hope I don't believe I'm saying it just because it was the first game I played. I've got a lot of sentimental value for it. When I actually look at it now, I think this is really good. So yeah, that's exploration in that other way. So recording this episode, it actually took us 2 hours or so to get the whole thing done. That is the topic and the questions. We actually did spend a lot of time on it. So what we decided to do is to split it up into two separate episodes. So this episode has been the episode about exploration, and in the next episode, episode 6, it shall be both of us still will be getting onto our questions, and it's the whole hour asking and answering those questions. So I'll see you in the next episode.